What do we mean by undocumented and illegal migrants? The term undocumented and illegal migrant refers to individuals who reside in the United Kingdom, but the government does not recognize them as having the right to stay. Typically, these individuals are non-citizens who overstayed their permission or don't have any other documentation that proves their eligibility to reside or work in the UK. The plight of undocumented illegal migrants results from the UK government's restrictive immigration policies, which often discriminate against certain groups of people. In addition, the Home Office's system of immigration is fraught with complexities, making it challenging for individuals to navigate the system and obtain the necessary documentation to legalize their status. The immigration process is further complicated by the Home Office's lack of transparency and accountability. It has led to widespread mistrust of the government's immigration policies and a general feeling of insecurity among undocumented migrants. The Home Office's discriminatory system is not offering any route to regularize the status of undocumented/illegal migrants. This means that even if individuals have been living in the UK for several years and have established ties to the community, they are still considered illegal and face the risk of deportation at any time. This lack of legal status also restricts their access to essential services, including healthcare, education, and social services, creating a significant barrier to their ability to lead dignified lives. What are the routes to regularization? The UK's Home Office has been widely criticised for not offering any viable routes to regularization for illegal undocumented migrants except for the 20-year private life route. This route, which requires applicants to prove they have lived in the UK for over 2 decades, has been deemed by many as a form of modern-day slavery and goes against fundamental human rights. The lack of options for undocumented migrants has resulted in many people living in the shadows without legal status or protection. Many of these individuals have lived in the UK for years, working and contributing to the economy, yet cannot access fundamental rights such as healthcare, education, and housing. This leaves them vulnerable to exploitation and abuse, as they have no legal recourse to report any mistreatment they may experience. The private life route, the only option available for those living in the UK for over 20 years, is fraught with difficulties. The stringent requirements for eligibility make it virtually impossible for many people to apply, and even those who do meet the criteria often need lengthy delays and rejections. Furthermore, the application process is costly and time-consuming, adding to the stress and uncertainty faced by undocumented migrants. Many experts in human rights groups have criticized the 20-year private life route, arguing that it places people into modern slavery. By forcing individuals to live in the UK for over 2 decades without legal status, they are effectively trapped in a state of limbo, unable to leave or return to their home country. This leaves them vulnerable to exploitation and abuse, as they have no legal protection or recourse to challenge any mistreatment they may face. The lack of viable routes to regularization for undocumented migrants also goes against fundamental human rights. The UN Declaration of Human Rights recognizes the right of everyone to seek and enjoy asylum from persecution and the right to freedom of movement within their own country and across borders. By denying undocumented migrants the opportunity to regularize their status, the UK is effectively violating these fundamental human rights. Moreover, the UK's hostile environment policy has only exacerbated the situation for undocumented migrants. The policy, which aims to make it more difficult for undocumented immigrants to live and work in the UK, has created a culture of fear and mistrust, making it even harder to access essential services and support. What is the ask? The issue of undocumented migrants has been a topic of intense debate and concern for many years. The United Kingdom is not immune to this issue, with many undocumented migrants living and working there. The Home Office should introduce a simplified route to regularization for undocumented migrants who have been living in the UK for at least 5 years. This new policy will be a positive step towards addressing the concerns of undocumented migrants and ensuring that they have the opportunity to contribute to society and live without fear. The simplified route to regularization for undocumented migrants is based on the principle that those living in the UK for at least 5 years have established a significant connection to the country and should be allowed to regularize their status. Under the new policy, undocumented migrants living in the UK for at least 5 years can apply for leave to remain based on their long residence. This means that they will be granted a 5-year temporary residence permit, which can be renewed indefinitely. To be eligible for the simplified route to regularization, undocumented migrants must meet specific criteria. They must have been living in the UK continuously for at least 5 years without serious criminal convictions. They must also have evidence of their continuous residence, such as utility bills, bank statements, and rental agreements. The application fee for the simplified route is set at a reasonable level, making it accessible to those on low incomes. One of the advantages of the simplified route to regularization is that it provides a straightforward and accessible process for undocumented migrants to regularize their status. This is particularly important for those who have been living in the UK for a long time but have been unable to regularize their status due to the complexity of the existing system. The simplified route provides a clear and straightforward, easy to understand and follow the process. Another advantage of the simplified route is that it encourages undocumented migrants to come forward and regularize their status. This is important because undocumented migrants are often afraid to come forward and engage with the authorities for fear of being deported. The simplified route to regularization also has benefits for society as a whole. Undocumented migrants who regularize their status are more likely to contribute to society and the economy. They can work legally, pay taxes, and access public services such as healthcare and education. Regularizing the status of undocumented migrants also reduces the strain on the Home Office and the courts, as it reduces the number of cases of undocumented migrants who are caught and detained by the existing system. Background: most individuals without legal documentation in the UK entered the country through formal channels, only later becoming undocumented due to factors beyond their control. The UK's immigration system is intricate and costly, resulting in many individuals being penalised and becoming undocumented due to issues such as being unable to afford expensive fees, experiencing domestic abuse, receiving poor legal advice, or making simple errors. Although there is no precise number available, recent estimates suggest that between 800,000 and 1.2 million individuals are undocumented in the UK, a higher percentage of the population compared to other similar countries such as Spain, France, Switzerland, and Portugal, where individuals have more opportunities to become regularized. The majority of undocumented individuals in the UK come from Asia, 52%, followed by Sub-Saharan Africa, 20%, non-EU Europe and the Americas, 16%, and the Middle East and North Africa, 11%. The undocumented communities in the UK are relatively well established, with more than half of the individuals have lived in the country for over 5 years. Many arrived in the UK as minors, and a quarter, 215,000, of undocumented people are children, half of whom were born in the UK. As a result, most undocumented individuals have family members in the UK, who are often their primary support system. These individuals are often part of mixed-status families, where everyone is at risk of being deported and lives with constant fear and anxiety. What needs to be different? When compared to neighboring countries, the UK stands out as an exception. Very few options are available to those who have established their lives here to regularize their status. Consequently, an increasing number of individuals need proper documentation and are forced to live on the fringes of society. Conversely, countries such as Portugal, Spain, France, and Switzerland offer clear and reasonably priced paths to regularization for those who have worked or settled down. To rectify this situation, the UK government must guarantee that undocumented individuals can regularize their status and keep it. Rather than the current 7-year, half-life, and 20-year routes, which are time-consuming and expensive, we need an affordable and straightforward method for those who need documentation. A 5-year course would provide an uncomplicated and transparent path for individuals pushed out of their security status and a viable, long-term resolution for those who have created a life here. Moreover, the ability to maintain the right to stay in the UK should create no independence from one's financial situation. The UK's immigration fees are significantly higher than those in most comparable countries and continue to increase. Immigration fees should be equivalent to the expense of processing an application. Finally, birthright citizenship must be reinstated so that all children born in the UK are automatically granted British citizenship. This would prevent the injustice of young people, whose only home is the UK, living under the fear of being deported. Undocumented migrants in the UK today, a new Windrush scandal? The UK government's introduced the Nationality and Borders Bill and the Hostile Environment Policy, which had severe consequences for undocumented migrants living in the UK. These policies could be seen as violating basic human rights, as they will likely create another Windrush scandal, where individuals were wrongly targeted and mistreated. The hostile environment policy was introduced in 2012 to make the UK less attractive for undocumented migrants. The approach relies on enforcing strict measures, such as forcing landlords to check the immigration status of their tenants and requiring employers to check the status of their employees, to create a hostile environment for undocumented migrants. These measures are not only inhumane, but they also have the potential to create another Windrush scandal. The Windrush scandal occurred when individuals who had come to the UK legally were wrongly targeted and, in some cases, deported. This scandal resulted from a hostile environment policy that placed too much emphasis on immigration enforcement and not enough on protecting the rights of individuals. Undocumented migrants are some of the most vulnerable members of our society. They often face discrimination and exploitation and cannot access essential services such as healthcare or education. The hostile environment policy and the Nationality and Borders Bill will only increase these individuals' marginalization, pushing them further into the shadows and making them more vulnerable to exploitation. In addition, these policies are likely to lead to increased racial profiling and discrimination against people of color. The Windrush scandal was a stark reminder of the dangers of discriminatory policies that unfairly target specific groups of people. The Nationality and Borders Bill and the hostile environment policy will likely exacerbate these problems, leading to further injustices. The petition grant an urgent amnesty to undocumented migrants living in the UK was debated on July 19, 2021 in the UK Parliament. Still, unfortunately, it did not lead to any positive outcomes. The petition called for an amnesty to be granted to the undocumented migrants living in the UK, who face an unfair immigration system that puts them into modern slavery and denies them fundamental human rights. The issue of undocumented migrants is a significant problem in the UK, and the lack of action from the government has only made it worse. The UK government's failure to address the issue of undocumented migrants has also led to an alarming increase in the number of repatriations of bodies between 2019 and 2022. Various organizations in the United Kingdom were interviewed regarding the repatriation of bodies, and the results were shocking. According to these organizations, the number of repatriations of bodies has increased significantly over the past 3 years. This increase is because many undocumented migrants who die in the UK were unable to access health services because of their status. Undocumented migrants are not just statistics, they are human beings who deserve fundamental human rights. The UK government's inaction on this issue is unacceptable and must be addressed urgently. The granting of amnesty to undocumented migrants would not only provide them with the necessary documentation to regularize their status, but it would also give them access to essential services such as healthcare and education. It would also help to tackle the problem of modern slavery and exploitation, which is prevalent among undocumented migrants in the UK. In conclusion, the debate on the petition grant an urgent amnesty to undocumented migrants living in the UK may not have led to immediate outcomes. Still, it has shed light on the plight of undocumented migrants in the UK. The lack of action from the government has put these migrants into modern slavery and denied them their fundamental human rights. The increase in the number of repatriations of bodies is a tragic consequence of the government's inaction. The UK government must address this issue urgently and grant an amnesty to undocumented migrants living in the UK. It is time to give these individuals the fundamental human rights they deserve. The undocumented migrants scandal in the UK has been a source of concern for many, with many questioning the accountability of those in power. In particular, the Prime Minister, Home Secretary, and Minister of State have come under fire for their handling of the situation. As individuals in positions of power and authority, they must be held accountable for their actions or lack thereof, which have resulted in the current situation. It is imperative that they take responsibility for their actions, answer questions, and be transparent with the public about what happened and what they are doing to rectify the situation. Ultimately, the public deserves to know that those in power are taking appropriate action to address this issue and prevent similar occurrences from happening in the future.